After 40 years in the business, a few sparse writing credits, and 25 unproduced screenplays, Jack Barth finally sold his first movie. It was a film with a far-out premise that explored the nature of talent, fame, and success. Then titled Cover Version, Barth's film was about a musician called Jack who, through an unexplainable event, becomes the only person in the world who remembers the Beatles. Jack books a few more gigs with his newfound superpower and achieves some small cult popularity, but mostly wonders why his one-of-a-kind songbook isn't bringing him the same fame and fortune it once brought the Beatles. Barth wrote the film from his point of view, where, quote, "I was lying in bed one night thinking, if Star Wars hadn't been made and I just came up with the idea for Star Wars, I bet I wouldn't be able to sell it. Carry that on to the Beatles. If I knew all the Beatles songs, I bet I couldn't be successful with it." This theme of professional disappointment was a reflection of Barth's own career. The protagonist, Jack, realizes that when it comes to success, message versus the messenger is a crucial factor. Personal expression does not always equal popular validation. Eventually, the movie was passed on to Four Weddings and a Funeral and Love Actually writer Richard Curtis, who fell in love with the concept and purchased the film. What Jack Barth realized just before selling Cover Version was that Richard Curtis wasn't just going to be producing the film, but writing the full screenplay, with Barth's credit being whittled down to co-story. What became of the film after Curtis wrote his version was very similar to Barth's original screenplay, including the premise, but with one major change of monumental significance. Curtis altered the story so that with barely any struggle, Jack becomes the biggest thing in pop music the world has ever seen. This became Yesterday, which was released to considerable success in 2019, making millions at the box office and receiving middling to good reviews. Of the various criticisms thrown at the film, one recurring theme was that it has an exciting and original concept, but its focus is in the wrong place, its execution flawed. This flawed execution has everything to do with that crucial change in Jack's success story. And in today's video, I'm going to go through the film and examine how that change created one of the most botched and disappointing movies I've seen in many years. This is the missed opportunity of Yesterday. And just before we get into it, don't forget to hit subscribe and the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when I release a new video. Oh, and spoilers for Yesterday. We open on Jack, played by Himesh Patel, a scruffy busker playing guitar and singing his own original summer song. And sing this summer song. A truly crap number, and one that seems to only captivate this girl on the bench, played by Lily James. Is it me, or do these titles look like they were made by a 12-year-old on iMovie? Jack gets the option of going full-time at his bottle shop job, which he isn't crash hot on, but then it's revealed that Lily James is Ellie, not his girlfriend, but his manager, and has booked him his first festival gig at Latitude. Jack rehearses some more derivative pop fodder in his bedroom. It's then revealed that Jack's Latitude performance consists of him playing in a modestly sized tent to an audience of no one save for some kids, a boomer couple, and his friends. Here we meet Rocky, an old zany friend of Jack and Ellie's who's now a road manager.
If I'm totally honest, I only popped by for a quick bong by the tent.
Then immediately gets fired as a road manager. Now, we haven't even got to the main conceit of the film yet, but things start getting pretty unbelievable right around this point when this exchange happens.
Hey, still making sweet love to young Ellie, I see.
Her line obviously implies that she's into him, and this is the big question of this film. Why? I mean, I get that she may like him as a person and has connected with him over time, and sure, he's handsome enough, but she's so blindly into his music as well that she puts her whole life on the line, gives up any other passions or dreams of her own because she thinks that the guy who sings this song, "Gotta follow this winding road," is undoubtedly destined for greatness.
Okay, stop. You gotta stop pretending that we're in a thrilling story with a big exciting end.
So here we have Jack being like, yep, let's pack it in. If it hasn't happened
by now, it's not going to. It'll take a miracle.
And then Ellie says, miracles happen. And it's like, girl, you should be fainting with relief right now. He's realizing that he's probably not very good at this, and maybe there's something else that he can dedicate his life to. And she's just like, we're not having this conversation. What do you mean? Why not even entertain the idea? We then get this incredibly natural exposition from Jack explaining how they met.
I can't be the star that we thought I could be at 14 on that day in the school hall when I sang a pretty cool cover of Wonderwall, and you were there backstage.
So they've been at this for more than 15 years, and she's still like, yep, you should keep attempting this. My youth is greatly escaping me, but I am still laser focused on making you a star. Also, I'm in love with you. Like, she is gagging for him. And also, Jack, what are you doing? You're a failed musician with zero compelling traits. You still live at home, no other woman seems remotely into you, and you've got Lily James throwing herself at you, a woman who has literally played Cinderella, a Disney princess, and you're like, nah, I'll just be off now with my dorky helmet while she gives me bedroom eyes. We haven't even got to the Beatles of it all, and it's already a very implausible film. And then we get to the scene where it happens. The lights go out everywhere around the world to a cover of the crescendo part in A Day in the Life, and then right at that moment, Jack gets smacked with a bus and all the lights come back on. I love how this guy just comes along and is like, you alright, mate? Alright, mate. So this incident is vaguely explained by this quick front page shot as solar flares could have caused global power cut. Richard Curtis just being like, oh, how does it happen? Who cares? The sun, solar flares, done. Then we have his friends exploiting his trauma by giving him fake teeth and a toy bus as gifts. Ellie then spends thousands more dollars on him by buying him a guitar, which he plays Yesterday on. So everyone is reeling from hearing this. His mate even says,
that was one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard.
with Jack becoming exasperated at how no one's heard it or the Beatles. He exclaims it's one of the greatest songs ever written, and then she replies with,
well, it's not Coldplay. It's not Fix You.
You just said it was one of the most beautiful songs you've ever heard. This is where, before the twist has even fully been explained to us, it starts to unravel. You're telling me that Coldplay would still be a thing without the Beatles? Coldplay, the group that sounds like if the song Hey Jude became a band. That Coldplay. So yeah, then Jack goes home and starts Googling the Beatles to no results. Oh my god, you're so loud. This is my dog Martha, everyone. Martha, my dear. He also Googles the Rolling Stones to make sure they're still a band.
Good. Still rolling.
You know the Rolling Stones, the band whose first hit was a song written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney, two of the Beatles. He then Googles Oasis, and of course no record of the band Oasis come up anywhere. It's like, yeah, no shit Oasis are influenced by the Beatles. Their look, sound, and overall vibe has been compared to them for years. But that's such an obvious comparison. No other band or artist is mentioned as not existing in this universe, but we know damn near every popular musical artist of the last 50 years was influenced by the Beatles in some form or another. But because they didn't have bowl cuts and wear John Lennon type glasses, it's implied that they'd still exist as the musical act exactly as we know them. And I know that they're just having a bit of fun with a light-hearted concept and you're not meant to poke holes in the logic too much, but they make it so cut and dry. I'm going to talk more about this later, but like, what if Oasis did exist, but instead they were a death metal band? Now that's a more fun idea.
Do you genuinely not know who the Beatles are?
Me to the other kids in school. He then starts going over Beatles lyrics in his head so as to remember them all as he has the grand idea to adopt them as his own. Here his mother says she's brought him a Pepsi and he replies with,
Have you not got any Coke? Huh? Coca-Cola.
And she has no clue what he's talking about. After a quick Google, it turns out Coca-Cola also does not exist. Now, my first thought with this was, okay, I know the Beatles' drink of choice in their early days was Scotch and Coke, but surely that wasn't what was keeping Coke going as a business. And then I remember that Coca-Cola is 130 years old at this point and was a known beverage well before the Beatles, which made me stop and go, oh, okay, this is not a universe where now that the Beatles don't exist, we truly see the consequences of their absence by what else is or isn't a thing. No, this is just a universe where any commodity, brand, invention, thing might also cease to exist. The Beatles just happen to be one of them. Oh boy, what a missed opportunity. Okay, so here we get a scene that's meant to be comedic, but honestly just comes off as frustrating as Jack plays Let It Be for his parents, but keeps getting interrupted by their neighbor, Jack's dad, and the neighbor's phone going off. Jack continues to play various Beatles tracks at kids' birthday parties, pub gigs, but still feels like he's not getting anywhere. Now, knowing what we know about this film's original story, this is a crucial scene that highlights Jack's realization that it's not the songs that are the issue, it's him.
It's me, that's the problem, that's the awful truth, the revelation. I know the songs are strong, but no one's interested still. Jack Malek's the problem.
That's not true.
It is. I just don't have the it that's the difference between Jay-Z and JY.
Which I gotta say, I agree on. I think it's really important to acknowledge that despite the Beatles songs being amazing, other crucial factors such as timing, personality, looks, Location, cultural significance, and originality are all ingredients that led to the Beatles' success. At this point in the movie, we're just about to arrive at this obvious conclusion before Ellie approaches Jack and says he's going to be a recording artist after this bloke, Gavin, sporting a perfect Beatles haircut, like, are you kidding me? Offers up his studio for Jack to record his songs. Now, here's a strange one. Jack records "I saw her standing there" in this mix of songs, but doesn't think to change the opening line.
Well, she was just 17. You know what I mean.
Ooh. Now, this song is the first track off the first album the Beatles ever recorded. Paul McCartney wrote the song as a 20-year-old in the year 1962. Very different circumstances to 57 years later, Jack Malik, a guy pushing 30, releases the song and doesn't think to change the line about a 17-year-old girl. That's just creepy. And it also would just be so easy to change it to, she was just 22 and she knew what to do. There, easy, done. Got you a #1 record, Jack, and hey, you don't sound like a pedophile while you sing it. She was just 23 and she was looking at me. And hey, it's a great song, but it's a very simple rockabilly-inspired number that, lyrics aside, really wouldn't sound that fresh or groundbreaking in the year 2019. So Jack flogs his CDs at work and gets noticed enough to be on a local TV station that's affiliated with the bottle shop somehow. I don't know. Anyway, he plays In My Life and Ellie is backstage, just besotted as usual. As he's about to tell Ellie that his songs aren't his, Ed Sheeran calls and says he really enjoyed the performance he saw on TV. Ed Sheeran then rocks up to Jack's house, soundtracked by creepy evil doll music.
I'm Ed. Is Jack here?
Oh, right, I'll see if he's up. Just wait there, love. Jack!
He's here to tell Jack that he wants him as his opening act for his upcoming live show. I think Sheeran's overall not bad in this role. He's natural enough and certainly not overdoing it. He's just in it a lot. I'll talk a little more about why I have an issue with him being in this film a little later. So Jack's finally hitting it big with Ed Sheeran. And now Ellie's suddenly very into her teaching gig and doesn't want to be his roadie, leaving the spot open for Rocky while Shape of You plays.
I'm in love with your body.
Cool. They travel to Russia, of all places. I think they specifically made it Russia so Jack could sing Back in the USSR. And this girl's like, hey, he's talking about me. He's also playing with just him and an electric guitar. Now, I know Ed Sheeran does his whole one-man act thing with pedals and loops and all that, but for a lot of these rock songs that the Beatles wrote, you really need a full band to fill out the sound. Not just because it'll sound better generally, but because, again, these are kind of old-fashioned songs. I mean, this track in particular takes direct inspiration from that 1950s Chuck Berry sound. I mean, is the crowd gonna be jumping this much from a dude they've never heard of play a retro rock sounding song with a single electric guitar? Apparently yes, because then he turns out to be a hit on social media, which we can see by some graphics that definitely won't look super dated within 5 years. Then we see this mysterious tall man in the crowd watch on in complete disbelief and amazement, like he knows something. After the gig, Ed's chilling with his entourage and Jack and congratulates him, but finds it interesting that he wrote the song on a 3-hour plane ride with no guitar, and that he also called it the USSR, a term for the country that hasn't been used for decades. Then we see little Ed's a bit threatened and comes up with a competition with Jack to see who can write the best song in 10 minutes. Then Ed Sheeran comes up with a very Ed Sheeran sounding song.
She said we are penguins on.
Which he definitely didn't come up with in 10 minutes. Like, come on. And this is what I mean. Even though in this film, Ed Sheeran's trying to make himself humble and obviously like not as talented as Jack and all that.
I was always told that there would be someone who came along that was a lot better than me.
But then there's also this scene where it's like, yeah, my music is actually going to be in this film a lot. And also I can write a song in 10 minutes. Like, are we really that humble? But anyway, he gets trounced by Jack, who comes on out and performs The Long and Winding Road on piano. This scene is intercut with the same stunned man from the concert looking up Jack online and finding out that he has more tracks to his name. Then we have Ed Sheeran concede by saying,
You're definitely Mozart, mate, and I'm definitely Salieri.
Then Kate McKinnon comes along as a big record company exec and tells Jack to meet her in LA to work out a deal. Again with these tacky looking transition titles. Man, what's that? Oh, okay, so Radiohead is still a band. Definitely not inspired by the Beatles in any way. They definitely weren't inspired by the riff of Sexy Sadie to write one of their biggest songs. Sorry, I'll stop. We then see Ellie asking Jack how she fell in the
A friend manager roadie column instead of the And I Love Her column.
This is all news to Jack apparently, and then he just leaves for Los Angeles.
Sun, 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 there
Okay, so here's Jack recording George Harrison's masterpiece, Something. Again, just on an acoustic guitar, and it still sounds lovely, but Something is an amazing song, not just because of its chords and lyrics, but for so many other reasons as well. The melodic bass line that seems to have a life of its own, the phenomenal drumming that seems to act as a response to the call of George Harrison's incredibly soothing voice, his masterful guitar solo, the sublime strings that beautifully round out the piece, making it, for me, the greatest love song of all time. Well, okay, stop, hold up for a second. Sorry, I'm actually midway through editing this video, but I've just discovered something about yesterday. So this scene that I just showed you where Jack was singing Something in the recording studio, he was not singing Something there. I mean, you can see his jaw fully not moving as he's singing this.
I don't know.
No, he did sing Something for the film, but in what is now a deleted scene with actress Ana de Armas. So he's on the James Corden show, which is still in the film, but a different sequence. And James Corden just asked him to sing a song right now, make up anything, something, for the actress sitting next to him. And then very cleverly,
So this is something.
Jack goes on to sing Something to the actress, or pop star. We don't actually know because it's a deleted scene. If you actually watch the theatrical trailer to this movie, you can actually still see a segment of this scene remaining. So basically, Ana de Armas was playing this character in the film that served as a wedge between Ellie and Jack, as like another love interest to Jack basically, and they cut it because I guess maybe she was too likable and they didn't like the fact that Jack's eyes were straying from Ellie. I don't know. Look, to be honest, as much as I love Ana de Armas, it was probably the right decision because the whole romance portion of this film gets blown out already, and having another character involved in it I think would have really made this film get away from its original concept. You can see the deleted scene, it's on YouTube if you want to check it out. Okay, anyway, back to the video. Jack then records his own The Summer Song for the record company,
I hated it.
who appropriately hate it.
I could just murder a cigarette.
What's a cigarette?
What?
Okay, so there's no cigarettes in this universe, which really opens a can of worms as to how the logic of what exists in this universe and what doesn't truly goes out the window. Like all the people who died from cigarette-related lung cancer, what happened to them? Are they still alive? Is George Harrison still alive? And here's another montage that represents Jack's growing success via social media. Ugh, gosh, these really suck.
We seem to be talking about the Shakespeare of pop music.
These songs, there's only 5 of them, but they break new ground. We've never heard anything like
Ah, mysterious woman alert. So Jack and Rocky come to Liverpool and visit Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane, and the grave of Eleanor Rigby with the hopes of remembering more lyrics, and this mysterious woman continues to stalk Jack. Ellie comes to visit him in Liverpool, still fully into him. They go back to Jack's hotel room, get hammered, and finally make out, before Ellie declares she doesn't want to be his one-night stand and leaves. Jack meets Ellie before she heads back to London, and she says that he's had more than 10 years to realize that she's in love with him, and now that he's the world's greatest singer-songwriter and she's just a school teacher, it's too late. In other words,
I'll always really just be Ellie with the frizzy hair. Ellie from the Fun Chum column.
okay, first of all, this is carefully styled tousled ringlets with a straight fringe. It probably took hours. This is frizzy hair. She says that she'll stay with him if he stays,
Unless you choose to stay.
but Jack has to appear on the Late Late Show and has to do all these things. And it's like, this has been what Ellie has been wanting for Jack the entire time. Remember Miracles Happen? I mean, was this what she always envisioned? That she'd drive him around and put up with him not getting anywhere, and then when he finally finds some success, she's like, I'll only be with you if you give up on your dream. Oh, this girl makes no sense. And hey, not Lily James's fault. Lily James, doing a great job. I mean, really, it's just more shitty roles for women who aren't written in any kind of cogent, realistic way. And that's on you, Richard Curtis. Now we have the marketing meeting of meetings. They go over Jack's title suggestions for albums, which unimaginatively are the exact same titles as Beatles albums, including Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, The White Album, Abbey Road, but with far shitter album artwork and zero context as to why they're named after a road, which, to be fair, gets pointed out by the marketing exec. Instead, they focus on the one thing that sets Jack apart from anyone else in the world of music today. No collaborators, no co-writers, no samples, no steals.
No featuring Cardi B. No featuring B. Burr.
Just the genius of one man only. And man, they really go to extremes to make sure the audience knows that all music and lyrics is by Jack Malik only. Definitely not the Beatles, Jack Malik. Jack then goes on James Corden's Late Late Show, who points out how strange it is that in this age of 16 people writing on one song, here's Jack writing all his own songs. Jack points out that that's how it always used to be, citing James Taylor and Stevie Wonder as examples. I mean, hey, good thing they're still around. What if James Corden was like, Who? James Corden then mentions that there are two men backstage who claim all of Jack's songs are the work of their band, the Beatles. We get the crescendo of A Day in the Life again as the feet of Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr step out onto the stage. I mean, not the real feet, of course, they wouldn't sign on to this film. Jack then shakes himself out of what was a paranoid dream. Oh look, Ed Sheeran's back, extending this cameo to what is just a full-blown role in this film. Here's one of my least favourite jokes in the film where Ed thinks Hey Dude sounds better than Hey Jude. Ellie calls to say that an old hotel that he used to play at back home is reopened and that she's been seeing Gavin, the guy who set them up with Jack's original recording studio. Jack decides to launch his album on the rooftop of the hotel. There's a press conference at the album launch as the mounting pressure on Jack continues to take its toll on him, making him feel more and more like a fraud. Before someone at the back calls out,
"Who was your favourite? John Paul, George or Ringo?"
revealing that it's the mysterious woman from Liverpool holding a yellow submarine. Then the bearded man from Russia calls out,
Why don't you record in Abbey Road like they did?
oh man, that's a great question. He could have just called out, why does your Abbey Road sound terrible? Jack then opens a gig with a very pop-punk rendition of Help. Finally, with a full band, and geez, he's really going for the full angsty artist on this one. Rocky comes in with a yellow submarine and says there's a weird pair wanting to talk to Jack. The lady mentions she saw him in Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane because she knows he can't sing songs about places he's never been to. She then thanks Jack, who remains confused. She says that they seem to be the only three people in the world who remember the Beatles, and because they can't sing, she thanks Jack for performing the songs. They then have a genuinely cute celebration together before she says that
A world without the Beatles is a world that's infinitely worse. So thank you, and use it well.
And finally, they give Jack a note saying that they've been doing a lot of digging. This brings us to a scene that I know a lot of people hated, but I actually found to be the sweetest part of this strange, messy film. Jack turns up to a cottage by the seaside, and we cut to an interior shot of a man in the background at work, and in the foreground, watercolor paintings, and I immediately knew who it was. John Lennon opens the door and lets Jack in for a tea. Jack then goes on to ask him a series of questions like, have you had a happy life? We find out John's been very happy. A good job, traveled the world, found the woman of his dreams, and lives happily. I couldn't help but feel extremely warm and fuzzy during this sequence. I had been watching this film and just feeling more and more bewildered by it as each scene progressed. But when this sequence started, it's almost like the rest of the film drifted away, and I could just feel glad about the fact that in this universe, John Lennon is alive and happy. The scene where Jack asks him if he can have a hug is probably the most relatable moment in the movie.
So good to see you. How old are you? 78. Fantastic. You made it to 78.
Except he's not nearly emotional enough about this. God, I'd just be a blubbering mess the entire time. Robert Carlyle does a pretty decent job as the uncredited John Lennon. He's a bit on the short side, and his voice is a lot more reedy than the nasal twang of the real John Lennon.
Found a woman I loved, fought hard to keep her, to live my life with her.
But he evokes the older John, one that we never knew, really quite well. I was just disappointed by how brief it was. I wanted to spend the rest of the film here. But of course, we get interrupted by Shape of You, again. This time in the form of Ed Sheeran's ringtone. Alright, we're on the home stretch. At the climax of the film, we have Ed Sheeran's Wembley performance, where Jack is performing a few songs, including I Saw Her Standing There, Here Comes the Sun, and All You Need Is Love. Then Ellie is projected up on screen before Jack admits to her and the rest of the stadium that the songs he's singing belong to 4 men.
The Beatles.
And gets Rocky to upload all the songs online for free, as he feels guilty for earning any money from work that isn't his, much to the chagrin of Deborah. Oh, Kate McKinnon, I don't think I ever said her name. He then admits to Ellie that he loves her, and Gavin's just like, yep, okay, sure. Ellie and Jack meet after the show, where Ellie says,
If you told me I was going to be on the big screen, I'd have got my hair done.
Meanwhile, the woman that probably spent like an hour doing Lily James's hair and makeup was probably just like, well, f me then. Also, Gavin is like, I'm number 2, all good. While this woman, who we've never seen before, probably from a deleted scene, but she makes no sense appearing here now, just stares at the encounter, who turns out to be another option for him by the end, because everyone has to have a happy ending in this movie.
It's such a beautiful night to make a change in our...
Oh, what do you know? Another Ed Sheeran song. Then there's this moment.
Oh, I feel like Harry Potter after he defeated Voldemort.
Harry Potter, who's he?
Things were just meant to be. Hearts and just...
We close out the film with Jack playing Obla-Dee Obla-Da to a bunch of school kids, as we also see Jack and Ellie's kids live out their lives with their parents. So that's yesterday, and having heard all of my excessive ranting about this movie, I think it's important to remember that it's really tough for me to go so hard at this film because any movie that aims to celebrate the Beatles' legacy and greatness is usually always something I can get behind. I mean, I've made a whole video talking about some of the best films that do just that. I'll link it up here. But I don't think Yesterday actually is about celebrating the Beatles' musical legacy. I mean, according to Danny Boyle, it's actually a secret tribute to teachers. Just one thing on Danny Boyle real quick, who directed this film, I might add. Even his iconic style of direction seems completely muted. Danny Boyle has made some of my favorite movies of the last decade, including 127 Hours and Steve Jobs. I've watched these films countless times, due in large part to Boyle's bold and artistically striking method of directing. Eventually, I'm going to make a video about his Steve Jobs movie. I know it's got nothing to do with the Beatles, but it's just so goddamn good. But anyway, you wouldn't know Danny Boyle directed Yesterday. Its look is so boring, the choices made are so generic. It's like the guy's asleep at the wheel while trying to make something of Richard Curtis's lazy as heck writing. I keep accidentally hitting my fiddle leaf. So all of this begs the question, what might this film would look like if they'd gone with Jack Barth's original story? What if the premise was the same, but with Jack meeting no more success than a little bit of cult popularity and a few more gigs here and there? It could have been a film that explored why the Beatles were so successful. Yes, it was their genius songwriting, but also countless other factors that remain unattainable to a singular person in modern times. What must that do to that person's psyche, their self-worth? Would it make them more humble? Would it make them go mad? I don't know, but it'd certainly make for a more intriguing second and third act than what we got. But what I think is the real missed opportunity with this film is how the ramifications of the Beatles not existing barely comes into play at all. Sure, we get the predictable Oasis not existing gag, but it really just ends there. Yes, other things like cigarettes, Coca-Cola, and Harry Potter don't exist, but as the film shows, that has no connection to a world without the Beatles. When I first heard the premise of this film, my mind raced as to how you could depict a world where the Beatles never existed and present it in such a way that shows how their impact was actually far greater than we realize. Like, what if people mostly had the same generic hairstyle? What if there was a band that never actually existed in our universe, but due to the Beatles never occurring, become the template for popular music, but they're from Afghanistan or something? What if people's relationship to drugs are entirely different and substances like LSD were utilized in a totally unconventional way? What if the war in Vietnam didn't end when it ended, and now the world's socio-political landscape looks nothing like the one we've ended up with? Okay, I admit, some of these what-ifs are pretty extreme ideas that are a far cry from the light-hearted rom-com that Yesterday ended up feeling like. But I think that's what a lot of Beatles superfans believe the film could have and should have been. Something bold that explores a darker world where the Beatles' positive and powerful impact never graced our hearts and minds. A film that answers the question, what is the actual cost of the Beatles never existing? In Yesterday, there's this other woman who also remembers the Beatles, and she has this line that goes, "A world without the Beatles is a world that's infinitely worse." I couldn't agree more with this statement, but what bothers me is that we don't see an infinitely worse world. Apart from Jack realizing that he's hit the jackpot, nothing in this Sans Beatles universe seems any different to how it was before. Which to me reads like their impact wasn't really that great or far-reaching at all, which you'd think would be the opposite of what Richard Curtis was trying to convey. But hey, that's where lazy writing will get you. Either way, what we're left with is just another vacuous rom-com with Beatles music spliced in to remind you that, hey, remember the Beatles? They were pretty good, huh? Can you imagine if one of the songs was called Hey Dude? So to Jack Barth, I'm sorry your movie didn't turn out the way you originally envisioned it. But hey, way to sell your first movie at 62, which according to yourself, makes you the oldest person to sell their first screenplay. So kudos to you, man. And again, my criticisms have nothing to do with the actors of this film. I think they all do a fine job purely in the writing and the direction. Come on, Danny Boyle, you can do so much better. But what did you all think of Yesterday? I know there's plenty of people who love this film, so please let me know why I'm wrong. Otherwise, I'd just love to hear any and all of your opinions on this film. And if you enjoyed all my ranting, please give it a like because it really helps other people find my videos, which will in turn help me to make more. And speaking of, my next video is going to be on my favorite musical biopic. It's a film that's near and dear to my heart, so I'm going to break down exactly why I think it's so good and what other movies could learn from it. So definitely make sure you're subscribed so you'll be the first to know when it's released. Alright, that's all for now. Thank you so much to every single one of you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.